Hey, I'm Tommy Chong. Welcome to High on Homegrown.
Yes, everybody, and welcome to High on Homegrown, the cannabis podcast from PercysGrowroom.com. I am Mackie from the UK, and on the panel this week, we have Marge from Canada.
Hello.
TG, also from Canada.
Gotcha. Hello.
GB from Ireland, and Monkey Doo from the southern East USA.
Afternoon from the southeast.
This week, we're going to be talking about germinating cannabis seeds and how to take cuttings and make roots grow on them so you can start your cannabis grow. Because by now, this is episode 6, so we've done 5 episodes so far explaining step by step how to set up your grow, things to consider, what equipment you're going to need, what mediums you can grow in, what nutrients you can use, where to get your seeds, and now it's all about what to do with those seeds and cuttings to get the grow actually started. So it's pretty simple, this is really, but it gets made out to be more complex than it needs to be for a lot of people. The seed, a cannabis seed, just needs a little bit of moisture and air and water for a couple of days, and it will crack open and spit a root out of it and start to grow. This is like one of the easiest seeds to germinate, I think. Do you all think?
Yeah.
Because there's loads of seeds that you have to soak for like a month and then do this to it and do that to it. And it's just like with the cannabis seeds, like within 24 hours, you can see a taproot popping out of it and something growing out of it once it's touched water. It's pretty fucking cool. So I think what we should do first is go through how we ourselves germinate seeds. Marge, what do you do to germinate your seeds? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I don't do anything particularly exciting. I soak them first for about 12 hours or so. And I think you guys gave me that recommendation when you were a guest on my show, Bite Me, the show about edibles.
Cool.
Shameless plug. And the last time I germinated them, I think I kind of like left them along, and then they had started to germinate in the water, and then I just planted them right in the soil.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Nice
and
and
I
easy.
think I've done that the last couple of times, just soak them and then put them in the soil, and that's worked well. Because I've tried the paper towel method on the plate, and it never works for me.
Yeah. What about you, GB? What's your method?
I'm actually in the process of doing it as we speak. I soak my seeds for 24 hours, and then I literally just pop them straight into the small little easy cubes or easy plugs. And within 48 hours, I will have a seedling pop up, and I have a 98% success rate.
So you skip
every
the
time.
paper towel bit as well?
I skipped the whole paper towel altogether. I've done the paper towel method once,
Yeah.
and the once I done it, it was either way over watered or whatever.
Or
It was too
dried
moist,
Mm.
and they just disintegrated. I mean, disintegrated, and I lost 10 seeds. So I've never done it again since.
Yeah, I feel like that method's the worst.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's just one of them old school methods that it comes from like the 70s and 80s before we had good seeds. So, and you wouldn't have the feminized seeds. They'd just be like regular seeds from some sensed cannabis plant, right? And they'll germinate a shitload of them with the paper towel method to see which ones would actually pop, rather than planting 100 seeds in 100 pots of soil and only 30 of them actually being anything good. I think it just comes from them days.
And that's the thing, like, as you said, Mackie, with genetics now, like, how many times do you not get success rates with it, unless you have not stored them correctly, or they weren't stored correctly from who you bought them from?
Yeah.
You know?
What are you saying, TJ? What's your method?
Usually, I'll put it in water for like 14 hours, 14 to 18 usually. Then I like the paper towel method personally. I mean, don't let it dry out. You know, I think honestly, heat is a big thing that people don't talk about. You know, everybody uses those seedling heat mats. Those are, if you put your shit right directly on those, I find them to be too hot and they can impede germination. So I always take like a ceramic saucer, you know, like for your pots, whatever. And then have like just an airspace, I guess, of about an inch, maybe between the heat mat and the whatever thing you're using. I use like an old Caesar salad container for it. You know, it's just a plastic thing that flaps down. And I put my paper towel in that, and I keep it moist using a spray bottle, because I find if you dump water on it, like with a cup or something, you can dump too much and you don't want to drown them. But a spray bottle works really well to keep it down. So yeah, just keep it damp. And like you guys said, with good genetics and good fresh seeds, Chilbert mentioned the older the seeds, the harder they are. I believe that, that just, there's more chances for them to be stored shittily. My crystalline entity, for example, I'll use that because I just germinated a fuckload of them. They all popped within, 3 days. Most of them popped over 50%, or probably about 70% popped within under 24 hours, because they're relatively fresh and I've properly preserved them. So that's the key. But yeah, water for a bit. There's a lot of people actually big proponents of just leaving it in water. I did that for for my Humboldt run that I was doing, and that was great too. Just leave them in the water until they grow their tap roots. But
I done that actually with the last ones. I had put them in and I forgot about the fucking seeds, and they were still in the press because I always put them in for a day at least, and 3 days later I went back and there was like fucking 2, maybe 3 millimeter taproot on
I always thought they'd drown, but I don't know. I guess it works, So
Well, you say, Monkey, what's your method?
Well, typically I'll use a Jiffy cubes, some Jiffy peat cubes. Basically just dehydrated peat moss and a little mesh stocking. But anyway, I'll start with that. The seeds, I'll hydrate those, and the seeds go into water, let's say overnight. In the morning, they go into the Jiffy cubes, which I don't want them really wet. So what I do is I take them out of the water after they've been soaked, and I put them on a paper towel and wick a lot of that water out of them. I just want them damp. I don't want them soaked. So then I'll put the soaked seed into that, much like TG does, except I don't use a propagation mat. I use the top of my Spider Farmer light, which just happens to be about 95-ish degrees.
yeah,
But
perfect.
I put an upside down a jar top on it so that the edges of the jar top on it, and then the Jiffy cube is in the middle, kind of insulating a little bit from the heat, and cover it with a humidity dome. And then 2 days later, the day or 2 days later, I have germination. It's pretty bulletproof.
That's
a good point about the heat thing, because the heat mats, like I said, are a bit hot, but I'm just touching my laptop now. If you have your computer on and it's like it runs all the time, that's a really good temperature. The way, it's just slightly warm, if it feels just slightly warm to your touch, it's probably perfect. You don't want it like hot, but yeah.
And I just do mine in room temperature nowadays. I just soak them in some water for about 8 hours, 10 hours, like overnight. Not really too strict on the time, but no longer than 24 hours. 24 hours is like the maximum. And then I'll prepare some cocoa, because cocoa's inert. It's got no nutrients in it. Because as well, if you put the seeds into soil that's too strong, it can shock the taproot and then you stop it from growing altogether. And that's a problem I've had a few times, converting over to organic soil. It's very strong, man. So if you put a seed in that, which has just got a tiny taproot, it can be too strong and just stop the seed from growing altogether, man. That's happened a few times to me. So what I do now is I'll go straight into a small pot of cocoa first. Just soak the seed for about 8 to 10 hours, and nothing pops out of it. It doesn't crack or anything. Then I'll just place it like 0.5 centimeter into a hole in the middle of the cocoa, cover it, make sure everything's watered properly, and just wait a couple of days. And seed always pops, man. It's easy.
That's why, Muggy, you were saying about the Jiffy pots. I use them as well as the easy cubes. And the reason why I swapped over is because the easy cubes, they hold just the perfect amount. When you have it takes like 15 seconds if you submerge them to soak them up. When you take them out, you give them just a tiny little squeeze, and boom, they're ready to go straight away.
See, that's the trick, really. So you have to keep it wet. If it dries out in the process, and that's what happens a lot with the paper towel method. That's what happened when I used to do the paper towel method. I'd forget about it sometimes, and I'd come back, check on it, and it's completely dried out. And by then, the roots and the seeds would have died. So
the other part of the paper towel method problem is having the paper towel too wet. You'll actually drown the seed. It has to have some air. You want that paper towel about as wet as a damp sponge, just moist, not a wringing wet sponge at all.
Just so it drips. Sponge. Just it drips a couple of times.
Not even hardly dripping. Yeah, when you try to germinate a seed, the earth should be moist, not wet.
Yeah.
Like you know when you have a fever and you damp a cloth and you put it on
That's
your
it.
forehead, just
That's
like
it.
that kind of moisture
Perfect.
content. But you're right though about the paper towel. Honestly, I think it's more like it is probably a redundant or unnecessary step that you can use. I use it just as bakers use yeast or hot water and a little bit of sugar to proof their yeast. You know, you just make sure it's active before you use it. Otherwise, it's shit.
Yeah.
And I always hated waiting for these. But yeah, if you have good genetics that you know are solid, like the crystal and entity and specifically C472.
Well, I mean, good point there. Because if I have had some seeds where I've had some failure in germination, and I'll always use the paper towel method as a backup. If it didn't work the first time, I'll put it in the paper towel so I can double check and see it.
Just throw it in the soil and let her go too.
Yeah, I think that's just the easiest way for me, at least. And
Oh yeah,
Nature's way, right?
yeah, the nature's way, man. Nature's been doing it fine. Them seeds would fall out of the mother plant onto the ground, lay there for a few months over the winter time, and then
The sun
germinate again.
warms them.
Yeah, just get warm and it'll be moist down in the long grass, and they'll just grow their seed into the. Like, do you even need to bury them? If you just leave it on top of the fucking medium,
Sometimes,
the
man,
root
they
will go
sprout in the plant because it's so moist, right?
Mhm.
I've seen that.
The cannabis seeds are so easy to germinate, man. You just have to have that right condition where it's wet, well, not wet, just moist, damp, not too cold, not too warm. Make sure that the humidity stays in there. Like wrapping. Marge, you want to quickly run over what the paper towel method is?
Well, whenever I've tried it, you just put your seeds out on a plate on a paper towel and try and keep it moist and then wait for them to pop.
And you
That's
cover
kinda
it
how
with
I
a
would try.
saran wrap, is what you guys call it, right? Cling film.
Oh, yeah, I never did that part.
Yeah,
Plastic wrap.
Worked
Yeah.
out for
Saran
me.
is actually a brand name. Like
Yeah,
you know,
saran wrap is the brand, but yeah,
cellophane.
the plastic wrap. I never did that part. That's probably why it always dried out on me.
Keeping the humidity in is massively important, man, and that's something that I missed out in my method. Is when I've watered the cocoa, and say I've got 4 seeds, and they're all planted half centimeter down in the center of the 1 liter. Let's say it's just a small 1 liter pot of cocoa. Seeds are in the middle. Then I'll get a plastic cup and I'll put that over the top to hold in the humidity, and that always helps, man. But because if you got fans blowing at it, it's going to evaporate all the moisture from the top of the medium too quickly, which can dry out the seed. So if you put a cup over the top and just leave it there for 2 or 3 days, and you'll see a green shoot come out of there within a few days, man. It happens really quick. But paper towel method is like March says, you get a saucer, you'll put another paper towel on where you'll put a paper towel on top of that saucer and you'll spray it with some water to make sure it's damp. You get your seeds and you'll place them onto the paper towel and cover those again with 2 paper towels, spray that with water. So that's damp. So like the seeds are sandwiched then in between the 2 pieces of kitchen roll is a good one to use. And then you put another saucer over the top and wrap it in cling film, and so it holds in all the moisture, and then you're just about good. Yeah.
Just go to the store. We all buy a bunch of salad containers. My thing is a salad container. It literally is. It's a clamshell. Like think of how a clamshell opens up. That, but you just snap it shut. It's plastic, so it keeps the moisture in really good, and it's recycling or reusing, which is good too.
Reusing's better than recycling because we don't have to do anything to it.
Yeah. Exactly. So anything you have that can contain moisture, doesn't matter what it is. Ziploc bags, Sparky mentioned, those work too. So
they just want to grow it. Just make them wet and let them do their thing. And within a couple of days, you should see taproot. And then you have cuttings as well.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Marge?
I was just to say the cup of water I find is the easiest one, and there's a lot less waste too.
I think the easiest way I've come across so far. I haven't left one in water for too long, so I wouldn't know about that. But I've seen people just leave seeds in water and they just germinate by themselves. And after a few days, it's got its own taproot. So, and after 3 days, if you don't see taproot if you're using the paper towel method, if you planted it in the soil, then give it like 5 or 6 days and you should see a shoot after that amount of time. And if you don't, then there might be a problem and you go for a little bit of a dig. But most of the time, 95% of the time, the cannabis seed is going to pop and grow a little white taproot, just a couple of centimeters in length. And then you have to plant that into the medium once it's grown, if you haven't already planted it. And it's just about that easy from there. But you can get cuttings as well, right? Some people. TG, you want to go on about cuttings, how to plant a cutting and things like that?
Assuming it's rooted already. Yeah, a clone I think a cutting is an unrooted clone essentially.
Yeah,
if we want to get into the semantics, but yeah, once it's cloned, you can just plant that. You know, it's essentially like going to your greenhouse and buying any plant, like you would buy your flowers for the springtime, and you just plant those in your flower bed. That's what a clone is. So it's very easy. Just got to make sure that they're not infested with fucking bullshit or something. Yeah, because that can happen very easily if they're not properly maintained. But taking cuttings is the art of cloning, I guess. And that's, I don't know, are we talking about how to make a cutting? How to make a clone?
Not really. I mean, we'll go into it briefly, you know.
Yeah.
But it's to be discussed further on down the line, I think.
Sure.
But, you know, in most places where you can buy cuttings, it will probably come with already having roots on it, and it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's a plant. Exactly. It's just a small plant that you're buying.
It's kind of like a 2-week head start.
Yeah. So I mean, so you'll probably buy the cuttings with the roots on, and then you can just plant them as if it was a transplant. So it's nice and easy.
Yeah.
But,
dig a hole, put plant in, water.
Yeah.
Away you go. That's a clone.
I mean, this whole germination thing is a bit easy, isn't it? So a bit of a short grow guide's going on right here.
Well, a lot of new growers really make a big deal out of germination, and I think they overstress and overthink it. You know,
Yeah.
the proper amount of moisture is a key factor. And you know, not too much, not too little. The proper temperature. If you dial in the basics, you're not going to have any problems.
You know, the proper temperature is not too hot, but not too warm, not too cold. It's like,
you know, 80 to 90 degrees would be great for your germination cycle. You know, I wouldn't go, 60 probably would germinate. Fahrenheit, I'm talking about these numbers. I'm sorry, guys. I know we're international here. Just old habits, the way it is. Yeah, if you go too cold, your germination might go slow. And sometimes if your germination is too slow, the taproot may die before it establishes. So, you know, just get your temperatures correct, get your moisture in that sweet spot, and just wait for it. You know, couple 3 days patience. Usually. I mean, sometimes it's taken. What's the longest it's ever taken you guys to have a seed pop?
Some have still haven't after many years.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know, about 7 days, I think, is the longest I've waited for one.
I'm about the same on that. About a week. Yeah. Then I have to go, doing the wrong thing, digging down and seeing if the seed died.
I'm usually about day 4 on digging, and that's when I'll see whether the taproot has popped out or not. And most of the time, it is, as long as it's been kept wet, then it's usually popped. But if I haven't covered it with something, or moisture's been getting out because the cup wasn't properly secured on the top, then they will have problems then. But most of my losses from the seeds, because I've recently gone from growing in cocoa to growing in soil instead, and it's strong soil as well. It's got all the amendments in it before the grow starts. So I've planted seeds straight into that soil, and they've like you pick the seed up after like 5 days, and you check it, tiny taproot, just a couple of millimeters in length. But that's it. It's like it's shocked and stayed at that point because it's got in contact with the soil, and the soil is just too strong. So this is always important. If you're going to go that way, if you're growing in soil, don't plant straight into that soil. You can get potting soil specifically for it, but I think cocoa's the best. Just take a big handful out of the middle of the pot and put cocoa in there instead, and just plant the seed in there, water it a little, and just wait for a few days. Then the seed, when it pops out, when the taproot pops out the seed, it will grow into the cocoa. That doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. All the plant will just keep growing out the roots for a while and feed off the food that's actually inside the seed. And it's just so much easier that way. The roots get long enough to hit the food in the soil, and then they're big enough to take what's in there. It doesn't shock them so much.
You can buy something called seed starting mix in a lot of garden centers, and it's basically just peat moss and perlite. Yeah, no nutrients in it, but it will do exactly the same thing you're talking about doing with cocoa. Yeah.
A good question there from Steve D. When is good to take the dome off? As soon as the seeds sprout, or leave it up for a week or so? Well, as soon as the green pops out from the soil, you want light on it, and you want as much light as possible. So take the humidity domes off. Make sure you have a breeze blowing at the plant as well, even though it's small. Have a just a light breeze, because that will make sure as the plant grows, the stem will grow thick to try and withstand this constant breeze it has, and that stops it from stretching too much. The stem, when it first shoots, it will stretch if it's too far away from the light for one, or it doesn't have enough light. If you keep it on the windowsill, the sun's shining at it, and then it's just going to stretch and be really tall, and the stem will be weak and it will fall over and just break eventually. And to prevent that happening, you bring the light down to the right level. Usually it's around 18 inches, 18 to 24 inches is what lights are usually kept above seedlings, as long as it isn't something too powerful.
Specifically talking about the humidity though, I don't use domes personally. I did have a dome on because I made a silly video about using a chicken container as a germination station, but my humidity is right now is about 12% downstairs, and my shit germinates just fine. Maybe it's not optimal, but I wouldn't put too much thought into like, oh my God, it's not humid enough, or whatever. Just keep the soil moist. Don't let the tiny little, probably single root dry out, because if that single root dries out, you're fucked. Bigger plants have more robust ability to withstand drought, but little plants don't. So soil is more important to keep moist than the air. It does help with respiration, but yeah.
And that being said, though, you said keep it moist. We didn't say drown the seed now.
That's right. Not like fucking, you stick your hand in and it comes out and you can wipe the water off your finger. You don't want that. No. Like a damp sponge.
That's right. That root needs air as well, so that you have to kind of balance that air and water. That's what your seedling needs, perfect balance.
And when that green comes, when you see green coming across the surface, at this point, it's like, it's harder to kill than ever. Once you've got to that point, you're pretty much off. As long as you keep it watered and well fed, you'll get to the end of your harvest.
The domes, though, massive. Like you can't do clones without domes. Those are where those come in more into play. When you're actually making cuttings, you have to keep them at 100% humidity for like the duration until they root, or else they can't. They'll die. And
that's where your propagators come in useful.
Exactly. We'll get into that when we get into cloning. But yeah.
Well, I'll use domes. I have germinated seeds in an auto run while it's in full run, and had to have the fans and everything going on, things like that. So in those situations where I'm germinating seeds in another tent where I have lots of airflow and things like that, I'll use the dome, but I'll crack the dome. I don't want the fans blowing on the seedling, but I want that seedling to have a little bit of air. So I'll like take a pencil or something and stick it under one corner of the dome to get airflow underneath it or something like that. And I find that that's a useful trick. I'll take a 2-liter soda bottle and I'll cut the top off of it. And I use the part that has the cap on it for the dome, because I can take the top off and let that plant breathe. And that way I can shelter it from the outside environment, the air, whatever else problems I might be having in the tent. So yeah, keep the dome on, make sure you get ventilation through that dome.
You saying something to that, TG?
No, I'm just agreeing from afar. That's right, I said.
I mean, that's it. And just like everything else which we've covered so far, there's different methods here, and they all work just as well as each one. None is any less successful than the other. You just have to, again, find which way is going to work best for you. It's nice and easy.
Because we really don't talk about these methods very often, but when we do talk about it, most of us are doing very similar things. It's
like
just
we all soak the seed,
thing.
right? We all soak the seed for 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, pretty much.
Definitely, yeah. You want the enzymes to be awakened and start doing their shit. But no, you're right. Effectively, we're all doing it's the same 3 things. I think Bubble Hawk said it earlier. Like moist, dark, and
warm.
The fuck was the other one? Warmish. Yeah, exactly. And as long as you achieve those 3 things, then you should be good, no matter how you do it, right?
That's right. And these can be kept in the dark as well while they're germinating. Some people like to put the light on, but it's not really necessary. That's good for temperature. It'll keep the room at a nice temperature, and they'll get used to that, and they'll germinate. But they don't need the light until that green pops out. And when you see the green pop out, that's when the light's needed for the plant. So don't worry about that.
Just do them in a propagator in the veg tent.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it, man. If you already got a veg tent running, then for sure just pop them in there.
Because as soon as they do come out, they've already got that light ready, boom, straight to hit them. Unless they come in
DD
when
there, he's got a really, really good point about watering seedlings. It's really easy to overwater them. So he uses a spray bottle. I do this too. So just a mist onto the surface and let it soak in slowly instead of just fucking drowning it with a watering can.
Yeah.
Much better way to do it.
I use a small little 10 ml syringe.
Yeah, sure. That
And
works
just
too.
dip a little
dripper
bit in at a time, yeah.
So then at what point would you consider that your plants are not a seedling anymore?
When the first true leaves are starting to form.
Yeah.
Really.
But this is
That's what
yeah.
I
So just in case you don't know, for the listener, when the seed pops out of the ground initially, it won't have them serrated leaves that we're all used to seeing on a cannabis plant. They'll have two little round leaves, and they're called cotyledons, are they?
Yeah.
Cotyledon.
Cotyledons.
Yeah, I often see them. They'd be still on the ends of your plants an awful lot of time when you're looking at them at the end of harvest. These like little flaps hanging down.
Yeah, just little round ones.
Yeah.
You can kind of think of them like the yolk. You know how like a baby chicken eats the yolk before it hatches, before it eats normal food? That's what cotyledons are for the plant. They're primary food. So they do start photosynthesis, but they also feed the plant because they look a lot different. And here's a fun fact. If anybody eats hemp hearts, you guys know what hemp hearts are, right?
No.
That health food shit. You know what you're eating? Cotyledons.
No way.
That's what they are. They're just ungerminated cotyledons. They're white because they don't have any chlorophyll in them, because they haven't generated any chlorophyll, because they weren't told to by germination. So they're still white in dormancy, basically. But they're tasty as fuck, and they're loaded with oil, which the plant uses. You know, all that energy in there. That's what the plant uses to grow as a seedling. So we also eat that shit because it's good. But fun fact, right? That's pretty cool.
Microgreens.
Yeah. Hemp hearts are actually cotyledons. But anyway.
Yeah, so it's all very easy to do, and it might sound difficult to start with and might seem complex, but eventually you just throw in seeds into glasses of water and then chucking them into something else to get it done. After a few turns, you realize how easy it is. But that first time germinating a seed, it can be intimidating, man. You really don't want to fuck that shit up when you spend 50 quid on these things.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. They're not fucking cheap.
Especially if you can't get them. You know, I remember when I ordered way back in the day, you know, when it was still illegal here. I have been growing in, you know, for a while. So I remember ordering seeds, and I was like, the one got caught by customs, and I was fucking devastated because where the fuck am I gonna get seed? I didn't know, you know. So yeah, you gotta, I mean, and even now, you know, if I only have one seed, if someone ordered a seed or gave me a seed and I only have one or two, I'm just like anxious as fuck until it germinates. So, you know, I don't know, it's just the way it is, but don't worry about that. It'll germinate if you follow our easy rules that we just went through.
That's right. And regarding feeding as well, you don't really feed seedlings anything. If you're in cocoa and hydroponics, then you'll have to set up a low EC, but for soil, you don't give anything to seedlings. Just keep the water going. Don't water too much, of course. You know, just normal soiling method, normal soiling. What the fuck? Normal watering routine will do just fine with soil.
Yeah.
But if you're growing in cocoa or hydroponics, then the seedling is gonna need food straight away. But that should already be in the medium. You know, and now the seed's already planted. You should have put that in beforehand. You know, you put your seed in water for your 6 to 8 hours, and you're going to go into rock wool if you're going for DWC or NFT or something like that, or you're going into cocoa. Then you want to water that cocoa or that rock wool before the seed even goes into it. So it's already wet, already moist. It's already got nutrients in it. Just a small amount. It doesn't need to be a super strong EC. And we'll explain what that means on the next episode. Just, you know, a little bit of food, let the thing just grow and do its thing. And there's food available for it in the medium. It will grow nice roots, and it will be happy. You say,
there's one really important thing. Don't forget the mycorrhizal fungi. Huh?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about coming to that bit because we need to talk about the microbes and shit that can help, but they're not necessary. I mean, you can have them and they help, but you don't need these things to make the.
There's more than one way to there's more than one way to introduce them. So, you know, lots of different good ways to get these microbes in there too. So
well, whether or not you need them or not, or if you are going to use them, you want to apply them directly to the root. And by dumping them, what I do when I plant my germinated seedling with the taproot sticking out is I make my little hole. I think you guys have probably seen the videos. There's one on my channel and one on Percy's.
Yeah, the one on Percy's got like
planting.
80,000 views or something.
Yeah, right. So, all it is fucking take like a popsicle stick and make a little slit. And then in that slit, before you put your seed, just dump a little mycorrhizal powder in there. You don't need very much at all, because all you want to do is get it contact with the roots, so then they can start doing their thing if that's what you're into, So yeah, it's really easy. And anytime you transplant, just dump more powder on the roots. That's nice all there is to it, literally. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, mycorrhizal rules.
I mean, it helps, but it's not 100% necessary. I mean, it helps more if you're growing in soil as well. If you're growing in hydroponics, say that you're growing in DWC and shit like that, then
you don't
it
want
won't help
shit.
so much. Yeah.
All the microbes, what they do is they make the nutrients in the soil that are maybe not as available as they could be more available, and also interact with the roots by giving them stuff. It's like a reward win-win situation kind of thing.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, exactly. That's the scientific word. Yep. But if there's no stuff for them to work on, like in a hydro situation, then maybe they're not as useful, obviously. So yep.
But it is really fucking easy, man. Anybody who hasn't done it yet, then of course we encourage you to do so. You could go out there, get yourself some seeds. If you don't know where to get seeds from, listen to last week's episode, and it's all laid out before you in front of all the whole process. All the episodes before this one lead up to this, and we're going to carry on with more next week. We'll talk about vegetation next week, I think. But after a couple of weeks of just growing and feeding the plant, then it'll grow its true leaves. It'll look a little bit more like a cannabis plant, and then it'll start going into the vegetative stage, which we'll cover next week. But that's about it for the seedling stage. Really, it's very easy. Just put the seed in some soil, and it can be just a week, 2 weeks after you've put water on that seed and planted it. Then you'll have a little cannabis plant. 2 weeks. Yeah. That's all it takes. And then you veg for a few weeks and flower. That bit takes a while, but seedling stage very quick. You say, Monkey?
I was going to say maybe we should talk a little bit about helmet heads, because eventually somebody's going to come up with helmet heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you do? Do you go for them?
Well, helmet head, basically what that means is, when your plant comes up, the seed coating may split, or all or part of it may not release from the plant. So you basically got this little stem with a little seed ball on top, and the plant just can't get rid of it. So you got to do something here. The best
thing to do is wait and be patient, and the seed will break it off.
Not always. I've had seeds actually die because I didn't react on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mine have always eventually broke through.
The first thing you should always do is keep that seed coat moist. So don't be afraid to take a drop of water and put it on that seed head, and do that for a while, unless that'll give the plant a better chance of shucking itself off. And then if you have to, go in very carefully with a pair of tweezers or a probe or something like that, and very carefully crack that seed coating off of it, and your seed will be okay.
Yeah.
Those things are tougher than you give them credit for. So sometimes you may even break one cotyledon completely off.
Yeah,
and as long as it has one, you can still have a healthy plant.
But try that's a last resort. After 5 or 6 days, if it hasn't come off, then you want to try attacking it like that. But
sometimes the seed just doesn't crack. Like it's hard to even because they're so delicate, like you said, and the seed, if it isn't cracked, you can't really just crush it and crack it like an egg, because you'll crush the plant. You can't stick your tweezers in there because there's nowhere to stick them. I had to do this a bunch just recently because my crystalline entities, there was a few that did have the helmet heads, and I always feel like fucking Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park, with that velociraptor, like, come on. I always actually say that in my head when I'm doing this.
Giving birth.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there you are, little fucking whatever this Bucky says. But it's always covered in like that internal film from the seed and shit, so you gotta peel that off too. Yeah, so it's just like the velociraptor. But you do have to be really careful. And I actually killed one of mine, I think, doing that, because I ripped it off.
Yeah, I've killed a couple before doing this.
So if you have to do it,
if you
be very careful. Be very careful. Give it a chance first.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, head over to percysgrowroom.com and, you know, there's people there who can answer the questions for you, man. Just take a picture of it, put it up, and we'll tell you what you should do. But it's probably best to just wait. And usually it does its own thing and figures itself out. Just give it time. They're pretty smart, these plants are. They know what they're doing. You just got to give them what they need, and they'll be fine just doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to survive. So
Life will find a way. Also from Jurassic Park.
Another Jurassic reference.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah, man. What movie did I watch this week, man? I watched Waterboy yesterday. That's what I watched.
Baba Boucher.
Yeah, that's fucking funny movie.
What's for dessert? Bam! Squirrel.
My little girl was like, why does he keep making that noise? You know, that wee.
Okay.
That's his
This is our
tackling
after
people.
party. After party.
yes, sorry. Because we have a few questions now we should get to from the listeners here as well. From Sparky's got a couple of questions for us. Just thinking about new cannabis growers such as myself. How about these? With photoperiod plants, when/how does one know to flip to flower? So, well, with auto flowering plants, that will do it by themselves. You'll start seeing the signs of flowers showing. So that one's an easy one. That will just do its thing. But photoperiod plants, what you're saying, you want to cover that one, Marge? When would you flip to flower?
That's a really great question, because the last time I've been growing was outdoors, so just the sun did it for me.
Right.
and I'm my micro grow right now. I haven't. Well, I just started with the 12-12 light cycle. So yeah, that's a good question.
Well, you say, Monkey, what would you do?
Well, it depends upon my grow space and the actual seed that I'm growing. I mean, some strains like to really take off and grow fast in the early veg, and some are a little bit slower. I can remember like LA Peyote Kush when we all grew that one. That was just a rough one to get going early on, but once you got it rocking. So based upon the plant size and then the size of the tent I have, I'm going to go ahead and grow that plant up to a point where I think when I flip the switch that I will maximize my capacity in the tent. I can't give you an answer saying, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. It's like, okay, usually if you look at the information on a strain, they will give you an indication whether it stretches a lot or a little, or you can ask a question at Percy's and somebody will probably know. But based upon that information is where I base when I flip the switch. Usually for photo periods, usually 4 to 5 weeks in.
What are you saying, TG? You say something?
Yeah, that was a great answer by Monkey. And the point he made about whenever you're at the point where you're going to maximize your canopy space, that is it. Whatever that means for you and whatever size tent you're running. Because that's the whole key to this, no wasted space. And
commercial grower. First commercial grow I ever went through was in Colorado, and that was one point I do remember the grower saying was that if any light reaches the floor of the grow room, he's losing money. And so that's kind of what I base my grow upon is the canopy capturing all the light that I'm putting out. And that's what my aim is.
Like heat your house with leaving some of the windows open, you're gonna
really,
what the fuck's the point of that, right?
So fill up your grow space.
Well, about 2/3 of the growth space, and then when the stretch comes for the first 2 weeks of flower, then you can fill out that will fill out the rest, and it will get.
There you go. That's what I'm referring to. Fill out your grow space when you're in flower completely. Yeah.
And you have to wait 4 or 5 weeks as well from seed before the plant will reach maturity, and it won't flower before then. Right? I am right saying that, right?
I flowered 17 days. That's kind of my record.
Yeah,
and I flipped right from 12.
Yeah.
I've seen them as low as like 3 weeks, no flower, but it depends upon the strain. Like T's is saying, exactly.
What are you saying, GB?
Yeah, it's really Monkey and Tej kind of hit it on the head. It's what I would have said as well. You veg it out as much as you want to. You can grow them out straight under 12-12 like Tej does. It really depends on your space. Like I've flipped mine certain ones and I've put them into the flower tent just because I didn't particularly need to have a big plant. I just wanted a different flavor. So a small little tent or plant done perfect for me.
Well, Well, we just did an
So-
interview with a legal medical grower, and he has a 5 plant limit, so he likes to veg them a little longer because he's going to get his 5 plants worth.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, man. So, good question. Nice one, Sparky. We have another one from Sparky as well. We got 3 questions from Sparky. What the fuck's going on here, bro? Would you recommend that a new grower tries super cropping? And if so, what tips do you have for a noob? Maybe like when it's best to do it, how not to break stems, or bends supports better than tape. Are bends type supports better than tapes? And bends are just like little clips that go on the branches. But super cropping is, I wouldn't say it's good for a new grower. Try it if you want to. It's not going to be too complex, really. It's nothing too crazy. But it's just, there's other things to learn in the first grow. It's better to just wait for that stuff for the second grow, the third grow. Get yourself some weed first. Make sure that you got some weed for you to smoke so you're not going out buying shit. And then go on crazy experiments. And you just want to make sure that you have enough first before you go and do these different things to, play around a little bit more. That's what I think. What would you say, Monkey?
Super cropping scares the heck out of most new growers because you're basically going to crush the plant. I mean, that's what you're wrapping your head around. If you're a new grower and you're curious about it, I'd say sure, try it. I mean, you're going to have to try it sooner or later anyway.
GB
it's
has
not absolutely necessary, but it's not hard to do.
GB's got a good way to not break the stems, which is.
I was just going to say, yeah. If a very handy little trick is if you get a €5 note or any bank note that you have, and just wrap it around it tight, and then bend it over. And what it'll do is it'll actually bend and it'll break all the things inside the stem, but it won't actually crack the skin. So you won't get any nasties or anything getting into it. And it'll actually it'll form a nice knuckle and everything on it.
Yeah, and that's the idea of super cropping, is to break the inside of the plant stem without breaking the skin on the outside, because you don't want contaminants getting in there, and you don't want shit leaking out of it either. But even if that does happen, I mean, I've been training my plants, and we've all done it. Well, anybody who's trained their plants, you're training away, and then snap, and you're like, oh shit, look, this whole fucking bit has fallen off. And if you just tape that back on, then things are usually fine after a couple of days. I mean, it might look like shit for a couple of days, but then it will get some moisture going through it, and it will do just fine, man. So don't stress too much.
As long as you have a good bit of the outer flesh still intact, it'll repair itself. But if you got like 2/3 of it broken off or something like that.
No, I've completely broken off before, and it's been fine.
I've not been successful with that bad of a break. I'll usually just cut my losses and adjust training in that case.
I had to do it on my very first grow. And it was just because the fucking plants were like fucking nearly 6. Well, I'd say they would have been 6.5 foot tall had I not bent them down. And it was just because I had too big a space with too small a light. There was supposed to be 2 in there. Like,
I'm just dealing with a grow that way where outreached my tent.
Yeah, it's a shame when it happens as well, especially on the first. But it didn't mess up my grow at all. Like, I had a fucking unbelievable yield off that grow.
So we have another one here from Sparky as well. Yes, the third one from Sparky. Thank you, Sparky, for your questions, bro. If you are an organic soil grower, what are good flowering newts to use? Are any bioavailable sooner than others? Just trying to help with questions. It's good, Sparky. Nice one, man. And TG, this is your kind of thing. This soil.
I don't know. Just keep feeding the plant. Lower the nitrogen if you're feeding. I guess like I don't even actually know if that's particularly true. I think that they do use a little bit less nitrogen, and in just traditional horticulture, phosphorus and potassium are used to bulk up the flowers, whether it's flowers, actual flowers, or tomatoes, or whatever the fuck you're growing, the fruiting bit, right? But for me personally, I don't add anything extra. At that point, I'm probably adding in some Epsom salts because my magnesium is maybe a bit depleted in my super soil, but my soil lasts me right till the end. I don't fucking add shit, man, for flowering newts. So I don't know. I'm a big proponent of keeping it simple and applying traditional horticultural theory, I suppose, to cannabis growing. I don't buy into those flowering booster shit. And
molasses is a good one you can add to the organic soil, right? For a PK boost.
Molasses doesn't. It's mostly
Blackstrap molasses.
it's sugar. It doesn't really have. It has low levels of iron. I know that, but I don't think it's particularly high. And maybe it's got a bit, but
It's mainly carbohydrates.
I think yeah, and it's more like food for the microbial population in there than like plants don't eat sugar. They make sugar using photosynthesis and carbon dioxide. So they don't absorb it in the roots per se, as far as I know. So
Yeah, it's for the
yeah.
microbes to eat.
yeah,
and
yeah.
shit out.
Which does help the plant in general, but not primarily. It's more of a secondary result. So yeah, I don't know, blooming newts in soil. I would just say, yeah, just lower your nitrogen a bit and up the phosphorus, potassium. Don't cut anything out, but yeah.
See,
Anybody else?
I get into some trouble with my soil at the near the end, like in the last 4 weeks or so of flower. Then I've just gone and got some old timers PK13. No, it's 418 or something. I don't know. It's I don't know what the exact levels, but I've been using that to keep them happier towards the end, and it's worked. But it seems to go through nicely for I don't know, the whole say 12 weeks or something. But then for the last few weeks, I'll get a bit of trouble. And it's the same as well. Magnesium is a problem, so I like to give a spray of Epsom salt as they're just going into flower. Give them some Epsom salts for their for the magnesium.
I will say I am using a 15-30-15 plus chelated micros in my strawberry coffin, my micro grow, because as I mentioned in my last video, it's way bigger than all the other plants, so it's got a lot more hunger in that, basically. And the super soil has been depleted, which is normal for me. I'm surprised the other ones haven't been, to be honest. So I've been feeding with basically a locally made Miracle Grow product, not Miracle Grow, but like it's called Rapid something. But yeah, 15-30-15 plus your boron and manganese, whatever the fuck else is in it, and a little bit of Epsom salts. That's what I do if I need to finish a plant for flowering. Yeah.
Man, so good question and good answers. How close? And one from SG2. I think this will be the last one. It says, how close to the top of the soil do the roots grow? It's like they grow right to the top, even on the surface.
Yeah.
I've got some on the surface. Yeah.
That's where most
heavier feeding roots will be down deeper, but yeah, there's a lot of roots up right up on the soil surface. I think the upper ones, if I'm not mistaken, are more into the air and things like that. And deeper tap roots go for the moisture.
Yeah, man. They even like turn into stem looking things after a while towards the end there. Super cool.
If they had the bottomless pot, man, they would. If you take a look at what they look like at the end, it's crazy. There's as much root down there as there is a plant above the soil.
You see DWC grows where their buckets are just completely filled with root. It's crazy, man.
I have on my logo, as above, so below. It's a reference to hermeticism, obviously, too, but it makes absolute sense in this case, which maybe is actually the point of it too. So healthy roots, healthy shoots, as they say.
Indeed.
Healthy fruits.
Yeah, if you look at some of these canna bonsai things that you see on the internet, you can actually see some of them have actually exposed the upper level of the roots, so you can actually see how the plant grows. They'll wash away the soil and put it on a rock or something like that just for show.
Looks cool, man. We should do something with cannabis bonsai.
Oh, that's a lot of work, man.
And keeping the plant that small as well. Difficult.
Never understood how to do it, but there's some really, really good people, or people that are really good at it. Doing it. Yeah.
Hey, man. So I think that's everything we have to say for germination and cloning right now. The next episode we go on to the vegetative stage, I suppose. So there we go, everybody. That was this week's Grow Guides. This was all about germination and cloning, and there's still a lot to this. So if you need any help at all, or you have any questions, head over to percysgrowroom.com, sign up to the forum, post a thread, and we'll be able to help you with any questions that you have. It's really easy to do it. It just sounds complex. So get started, man. Just get your seeds, get some good seeds from a good seed bank, pop them, and get ready to grow some weed, man. You won't look back. Once you've started doing it and the actual grow has begun, it all becomes a lot easier, and you realize how easy this whole process is and you wish you'd been doing it for years. So get your seeds, germinate them, and begin the grow. Next week, we're going to be talking about the vegetative stage, and we'll talk about some topping and some training and the best way to get through the vegetative stage of the growth. But it's all really easy. I hope you're enjoying the series so far. Please leave a review on whichever podcast network you listen to the show on, and head over to youtube.com/high-on-homegrown and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have a live session there every Friday, so you'll be able to come and join us and ask questions and just chat about things in general with us on Fridays. Then we have the main show on Sunday nights, and you can come and join us there too. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure, as usual. We'll catch you at the session tonight or on Sunday for the main show, or for the next show on Monday, which is the cannabis news. It's been a pleasure. See you on the next one. Goodbye.